Welcome to the Sanity Project podcast, where you can awaken your mind to clarity and success even in today's life challenges. We're here to provide insights and solutions that will help you live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Here's your host, Joanne Victoria.
Hello, everybody. This is Joanne Victoria with another amazing episode of the Sanity Project podcast. You are here to discover a life of clarity, confidence, sanity, and entrepreneurial success. And my, oh my, do we have an important guest for you today. Her name is Adele Spraggon. Adele is an author, international speaker, and trainer. She was awarded the 2020 Customer Experience Woman of Inspiration Award, and in 2021, she was recognized as the top behavioral expert of the year. Her book, Shift, 4 Steps to Personal Empowerment. I'm going to say that again. Shift, 4 Steps to Personal Empowerment, has won 3 awards and is sweeping the globe, transforming how people are setting and achieving their goals. There's more, but I'm going to let Adele talk about it to you directly. Welcome to the show, Adele Spraggon. Did I pronounce your last name properly?
It rhymes with dragon. Makes it easy to remember.
I'm a dragon. Yes. Adele Spraggon. And we discussed many things prior to starting the recording, people. We didn't discuss the pronunciation of her name. Oh, well, Adele Spraggon. So welcome to the show, Adele. I'm so glad you are here. You have so many things that we can talk about.
Oh, I'm super excited to be here, Joanne. Thanks for having me.
I'm grateful that you are here. So tell the audience how you got here. Why are you now helping people with methodologies that did not work for you, and how you created your 4-step repatterning technique, and how you wrote your 4 Steps to Personal Empowerment book?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I've been in the personal development industry for, around 30 years. I was coaching initially using all the typical mindset approaches to behavioral change. And I was myself not doing very well using those approaches. So, Joanne, like many of your listeners, I wanted my own business. I started 3 of them. The problem is I quit 3 of them, one after another. And each time I would get close to success, I would turn tail and I would go running back. Now, at the same time, as I said, I was also a coach. I was coaching in one of the top industries, behavioral change industries in the world. It's global business. And I couldn't understand why all of the approaches that I was coaching and that I was using myself were not working when it came to me starting my own business. And so I started to question the people that I was coaching, and I said, come on, be honest with me. Like, how successful are you? And about 25% were doing extremely well using the mindset approaches that they were being given. And then the other 75%, some of them were doing okay, and a lot of them were not doing well at all, like me. And so I thought, okay, it cannot be our fault. I knew these people. I knew I was following everything that was being taught to me. And so I decided to enroll myself in university, and I wanted to study the human mind. And so I got my master's. I went through and I got my master's in humanity, and I really wanted to take a deep dive into the brain and how it works. And so based on what I learned in university, and then based on studying my own brain and how it was working, based on what I was learning, I determined that sure enough, we have all been using the wrong operating instructions. And so I created new operating instructions, which are around repatterning the brain. And I'll tell you, Joanne, the difference is night and day. About 87% of the clients that I work with today get the results that they set out to get. They achieve their goals, compared to 25% before.
Those are amazing statistics. Go ahead.
When we know how our brain is actually working, and I'm going to get into this in a moment because it's truly surprising what the latest brain research is showing us. when we know how our brain is working and we know how to work the brain, it is amazing how much people can achieve. In fact, you'll shock yourself by how much you can achieve.
Several years ago, I took a class from, I've forgotten her last name, but her name is Dr. Arlene something, and she was all about the brain, and that was her perspective. And she was talking about the different parts of the brain and how we were functioning, most of us were functioning from the wrong sides of our brain. Does that make any sense? Is that part of what your repatterning is?
Yeah, so part of what we need to understand about the brain, about 20 years ago, and many people still accept this as being true, we used to think that the left part of our brain was responsible for logic and mathematics and language center, and that the right side of our brain was creative and imagination and all of that, right?
Right.
Well, that has now been debunked. Dr. Ian McGilchrist, Jill Bolte-Taylor, these are all neuroscientists who are taking a fresh look at the different hemispheres of the brain and determining what's actually going on. So it's not so much what the left side of your brain is doing and what the right side of your brain is doing that's important. It is more how they are doing it. So both sides of a person's brain are needed for creativity and language. But how they are operating is surprising. So what happens is there's two equally important things, Joanne, that your brain needs to be doing right now in this moment. One thing is to concentrate on what I'm saying. And in order to understand what I'm saying, you need to use past-based learning to understand that. But equally important, and that requires that you filter out much of the distractions around you so that you and I can have a conversation, okay? Equally important that at the very, very same time, you need to be aware of possible dangers or opportunities that might be in this space. They don't necessarily have to be there, but your brain needs to be alert to everything that is around you at all times. And when you think about it, these are two very, very different functions that your brain needs to do simultaneously. So how do we do this? Well, nature found a really amazing way. She just severed your brain in two. And she said, okay, left hemisphere, you be responsible for zeroing in and focusing in on what Adele is saying. And right hemisphere, you be aware of everything in your space. Okay? So that means that your right hemisphere is actually drinking in everything that is going on in this immediate moment, in this particular space and time, while your left hemisphere is relying heavily on what occurred in your past experience, and it's using past-based knowledge to interpret what's going on. And how the left brain does that is it creates a virtual map that sits on top of the whole of what's actually going on now. So what's going on today in today's planet, today's world? Well, we have over-educated and over-prioritized the left brain's way of doing things. And that has left us largely cut off from what is actually going on in the present moment, from what's going on in the here and now. And so as we over-prioritize the left hemisphere, we became unaware, we lost the context of the situation. Ideally, what should happen is the left hemisphere should pass its interpretation back to the right so that context can be brought to the situation. You want to know what's screwing up everything on this planet today? It is strictly that. When we can strengthen the communication between our hemispheres, the peace of mind, the creative solutions, the ability to be present, the ability to not take things personally, the ability to be happy and joyful, all of that becomes our birthright because it's built right into our brain.
Okay, part of my brain, and I don't know what else, maybe it's the right side because the left side is the past, shifting data over to the right side, yes? I'm I'm looking at the best way for me to receive this information along the way, just so that you know that along the way when you were speaking, part of my brain shut down.
Okay. I love that.
No, I pay attention to this because I'm an avid reader, and I use reading to shut down, if that makes any sense to you. I have to do something so that I stop my brain, because I can do quite a few things in my brain even while I'm reading. So I have the only thing that I know how to use as a tool when my mind is going with so many things, however you perceive that to be, left to right, right to left, or the virtual map on top, is that I have chosen, and it works pretty much good, is to put a screen in my brain to shut down any outside noise. It's like a whiteboard. I just pull down the whiteboard. And I usually do this in the middle of the night when I'm trying to sleep, because my mind does not stop, and I have a hard time. Everybody listening, here we go. Okay, so this is what I do. It's a screen or a whiteboard that just prevents extraneous data from interfering with either my reading a book or trying to sleep. Does that make any sense at all?
So what I hear you say is that you found a way to filter out all the confusion, the chaos that is part of the current moment by using a screen that cuts off all of that outside information.
So let's talk about this 87% figure you just threw out. What do you mean by that? What are you talking about there?
Yeah, so one of the surprising things, Joanne, that we are learning from understanding the brain is, here's what I'd like your listener to think about. Here is our brain, and it is inside this dark and silent room. As Anil Seth likes to say, Anil Seth is a neuroscientist, he says, there's no sight in here, there's no sound in here, there's no touch in here, there's no taste in here. There is nothing in the brain except these electrical impulses that are flying down these neural pathways. And it is based on those electrical impulses that we understand the world around us. So when we look at a tree, we are not actually seeing the tree. What we are seeing is an electrical impulse in our brain that delivers a concept called tree. Make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. So we base our actions, our behaviors, and our beliefs on these neural pathways in our brain. That's how we say, I know what to do, I know what to think, I know what to feel. But much of that information is given by past patterns that we created when we were little, that we continue to run on today, that actually have very little to do with what's actually going on the outside world. Because here's the thing about your brain. From the moment you were born, your brain has had to piece together patterns in order to know what you should do, feel, and think. Make sense?
Absolutely.
So unlike other animals that are born with instincts, that know instinctively what to do, the human brain is unique in that it has to learn everything. We're pretty much born a blank slate. So we come into this world, and very, very quickly our brain has to piece together patterns, and those patterns continue to drive our actions. And oftentimes they're driving ineffective actions, not because there's anything wrong with the person, but because nobody has taught us that action is actually a pattern in the brain. And that in order to take a different action, all we need to do is upgrade that pattern. So that's what I learned, and that's what my repatterning technique does, is it changes the underlying brain pattern rather than dealing with the situation out there.
Okay, upgrade your patterns. Got it. And I think that's clearly understood by the audience, right, audience? They're all nodding their heads. And, well, I always tell the audience to re-listen to the podcast, because they will have missed a lot by just listening. You know, they may get the essence, they may get the override. But if they re-listen to the podcast with pen and paper, I promote pen and paper as opposed to computer writing, because the handwriting of what you're doing goes to the brain easier. Maybe I'm mistaken. and is more ingrained inside of you. So I know that they're listening going, yes, I've got that. I got what she's saying. The human brain.
And you know, I can give a case study which will help to understand a story from one of my clients, which might make this very clear. So, you know, and this story is in my book. If anybody gets my book, you'll read this story as well. But I'm going to tell the story of Rose, who she got a leadership position in a nonprofit. And one of her roles in this leadership position was to lead the weekly meetings, the weekly strategy meetings. The problem is that every time she led one of these meetings, it would go off track. Now, luckily for Rose, she had been working with me for a little while, so she knew about brain patterns. So she knew that the problem was not actually out there in the situation. The problem was not in the men in the room who were causing her to go off in the wrong direction. She was already aware, okay, I have a pattern in my brain that is causing these meetings to go off track. Now, that is done not with blame and shame. That is just done with ownership of the pattern, right? It's a pattern that is driving your action. So she reworked this pattern. What happened next? Well, the very next meeting, everything went on track. The men who typically would have had their own agenda and been steering the meeting differently didn't. They steered that meeting in the way that she needed it to go. And everybody came away from that meeting really happy. In fact, some of them came up to her afterwards and said, great meeting, way to go, like you did great, right? What happened? Well, what happened is this. Typically, when we're working with mindset techniques, what options would Rose have had? Well, she might have gone to the men to say, hey, you know what? I really need you to stay on track. Like, you know, stick with me on this, right? Or she might have gone and got more leadership training. Or she might have blamed herself and said, I'm not a good manager. She might have even fired some of them, right? She would have always been trying to fix the situation as if the situation lived out there. Knowing that it's brain patterns, though, what Rose realized that was happening was that somehow the actions she was taking, were not taking this meeting in the right direction. And she knew that her job was to remove and upgrade that brain pattern. So that's what she did. She just removed the pattern that was taking the meeting in the direction she didn't need it to go. Now, the next meeting. Did Rose say things differently? Yes. Did she perhaps stand a little straighter? Yes. Was she no longer intimidated by these men? Yes. All of that is true because her pattern now took an optimal action for that meeting. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
We spend way too much time fixing problems as if they exist out there in the situation. When we upgrade the internal pattern, all of that goes away.
Well, what was her pattern?
What was her pattern? Great question. A pattern is an intertwined physical sensation, emotion, and thought. In her case, what Rose realized was that these men intimidated her. She was nervous. Her thought was, they have more credentials than I do. Okay? And that was steering her away from the path she needed them to take. Now, that pattern was given by a much earlier experience that Rose had gone through. And it had caused her to be intimidated in front of powerful men. So all she had to do was remove that, and her new pattern took an optimal action, which led the meeting differently.
Got it. So it is all up to us. We are it.
We are it, but not from a position of that we're used to. We're used to blaming ourselves, right? That's typically what happens. We tend to blame ourselves, or we tend to blame the situation, or we tend to blame somebody else.
Right.
When we work with patterns, there's no blame. I like to say there's no blame, there's no shame, there's nothing to fix. There is only a pattern, which is taking an action that doesn't work. Our job is to know that it's a pattern, to own it as a pattern that's arising in our brain, and to tease it apart, tease that neural pathway apart, so that you remove that pattern and give yourself an opportunity to take a different action.
Well, this sounds like a tremendous solution, because I don't think that many people believe that they have any patterns in their brain at all. They're just following the lead that was provided to them by their parents, mostly, because that's the way we learn, and their schools, their teachers, and the outside world, and somehow put these all together in some sort of a potpourri of maybe incorrect, inappropriate, unassuming patterns, and choose to act on those when they're not right for us specifically, as they weren't for Rose. Rose had this mishmash of thoughts in her brain that she used to function by, and when she was leading this group of people who happened to be men, who she happened to be intimidated by, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which happens to women from time to time. I giggle at that because it's quite a big thing. And you were able to help her in repatterning her brain and repatterning the pattern by teasing it out and manipulating it and or getting rid of it. And it's all doable. People who are listening, this is all doable. And you won't have a stroke. You won't, stop being who you truly are. You'll be more of who you truly are if you can own your own power. And at least that's what it sounds like to me.
Absolutely. Everybody's brain is actually wired for success. The only problem today is that nobody has taught us about brain patterns. That's the only problem. As soon as we know that the brain is adaptability itself, that it is designed to be upgraded, as soon as we have a technique to upgrade it, there's frankly very little that people can't accomplish, like I was saying at the beginning. I mean, the difference between the 20% success rate that most entrepreneurs are up against compared to an 87% success rate is night and day.
No, it's beyond that. It's two different worlds.
It's two completely different worlds. And the beautiful thing about knowing that everything is patterns and being able to play with those patterns is that you're no longer pushing past your comfort zone. You're no longer trying to take actions that you are uncomfortable taking. You're no longer trying to figure out what all of those actions need to be. All of that also goes away, because the only thing that we need to do is remove the pattern that is causing the problem. The brain is brilliant. Everybody listening here, what I need you to know is this. You have a brilliant subconscious which has been absorbing everything that you have ever tasted, read, smelt, overheard, touched, seen in your lifetime. All of that is stored in the unconscious regions of your brain. Now, it's not in the way of memory. It's not like you can open up a drawer and say, what was I doing May 12th, 2002? It's not like that. But it is stored in there in what I call the vast warehouse within. And when we remove old patterns that are driven by our past, patterns that no longer work for us, where the brain goes in order to access a new pattern is taps into that vast warehouse. Now tell me, and I'd like you to think about how much information you have absorbed throughout your lifetime, how many experiences you have had. That's why we get an 87% success rate, because most of the answers are already in the brain. There's nowhere you need to go to find them other than yourself.
I'm amazed. I'm sure some of our listeners are amazed as well, because yes, it's all there. And the way you're talking about it, it's not that we can access it by saying, where is that, situation where I succeeded better than the 25% situation. And, maybe I'll just redo that one, when that's not the key. That's not the point. Number one, you can't access it because you can't remember it unless you wrote it down somewhere and have a lot of data somewhere on your computer or on your notepad or on your phone or whatever. So you solve the problem. If it is a problem, it's a situation. I hate calling things problems. Words are so limiting to what you're doing. I mean, it's no wonder you got all these awards. I mean, seriously, you're talking about taking an existing pattern and blowing it up.
Yeah. Or just gently reaching into the pattern box, finding the one that doesn't work, gently lifting it up and putting it down on the outside of that box. And now your brain will do what your brain is designed to do, and that is create patterns. And the pattern it is going to create today is with all the adult faculties that you have been storing up throughout your lifetime.
So how much of this is covered in your book, Shift 4 Steps to Personal Empowerment?
All of it. You can get all 4 steps in that book. I talk about how to identify patterns that are not working. I talk about what happens once you repattern the brain and the results that it will deliver. And anybody who gets the book will get all 4 of the steps, and you'll be able to apply it yourself. And if people have any trouble, they can always reach out to me.
And where can they reach out to you?
Best place is my website, adelespraggon.com.
And for those of you who don't know, Adele, like the singer Adele, Spraggon, SPRAGGON.com. I don't want you to leave out one of those G's. You're looking
That's
for...
right. Rhymes with dragon, but double G, yes.
Double G Dragon. Double G Dragon. That's what we're going to call it from now on. Adele, the Double G Dragon. Okay, my goodness. Okay, so you're sending people to your website. Give me 1 or 2 things they're going to find on your website that will make them really, really happy.
Yeah, so you can get a free copy of my book. All I ask is that people pay for shipping. And that's, you'll see the book tab there. And they can also get free video training. Just click on the first button on the front page, and that'll deliver some free video training into your inbox.
Well, I'm going to order the book. I'm going to check out the free video training. And what are you going to do, listeners? Well, this has been amazing. It has sparked something in me. We're here. It's all about timing, in my opinion. And you are here at the right time, certainly for me. So if not just for me, I would assume for several of our listeners, worldwide listeners, global listeners. So what didn't work for Adele Spraggon, she changed. She did what she needed to do. And that's what you need to pay attention to as well, listeners. Remember, re-listen to this podcast with a pen and paper. Get your yellow pad out, whatever you choose, and put that pen in your hand and start taking notes. Then go to adelespraggon.com and get the book. What, a free book? What do you want? Free book, just pay shipping. How much is the shipping, Adele?
International is $20, $15 in U.S. and Canada.
$15 in U.S. and Canada. Okay. There you know. There you go. You've got all the knowledge in your hands. If you want to live your life more successfully than you're doing right now, go to adelespraggon.com. I want to thank you for being here, Adele. This has just been an amazing show. Timely. I'll tell you more about that. And I wish you the absolute best.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Joanne.
You're more than welcome. Okay, people, on to the next one. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project podcast. Please go to AskJoanneVictoria.com to listen to more podcasts. Check out Joanne's coaching programs and get a free copy of her report, 5 Steps to Achieve Life-Work Harmony. That's AskJoanneVictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.